15 minutes. But synchronicity is going to be the focus of that. So very last minute, I got called on by the same Impact Collaborative group to facilitate to lead part of a discussion today. So I'm here with you in spirit. Once again, I apologize, but I'm going to do my portion of this and then I'm going to jump back on, because being here with all of you is also important. So this opportunity literally just came at me yesterday. So I'm excited. And as you can see, I'm coaching a team from Alabama A&M. So that's fun stuff.
Yay. That's awesome. Talk about synchronicity. All your stuff seems to be coming together over these past few weeks, right?
Yeah. And this is the organization that I'm hopeful that a job opportunity might surface with them. But regardless, they do want to engage in future coaching opportunities and coaching different teams from land-grant university. So one way or the other, it's a really good thing. So I apologize. I really hate to miss, but also I couldn't say no to this.
I love it. And can I just mention while you're still here, Kyle, that like you had your week where you were kind of like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do, right? You were in your dark night of the soul. And I think the following week was mine. And it seems like your stuff then just started happening after that, and mine as well, right? So I don't know. I just feel like there was a synchronicity there too. There was something that was happening. And maybe your thing started my thing, right? Because you were kind of there first, and then maybe subconsciously I saw that and I was like, okay, this is my time to let go and just be like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. And that led to all of this other stuff. So thank you.
No, thank you. I mean, thank everyone. I think we all really need to thank Sean, right? Because I think what's most important is that when we allow ourselves, and thank you, Sean, for creating this container, but when we allow ourselves to fully embrace and get into the container, things will start to happen. So it's cool stuff.
Yeah, it's neat.
A container is kind of limiting though, right? Because it's got boundaries, but I just like the analogy of creating the container that you want to exist in.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that feels like the acknowledgement of it. Like you can't move through an issue unless you've acknowledged it. And I think here it's like publicly in a way, like it's not public, but it's, I think that's a big part of it. So cool. Yay, Kyle.
So I'll be here until about 12:15. So.
Well, we're gonna make space for you before then, because I actually think the container is really valuable. And I'm coming back to like the limitations and constraints on our creativity and in general, and like how powerful it is to kind of set deadlines for ourselves. And it's kind of where, in terms of moving forward, if this is like self-awareness and we're moving into self-actualization, and how this might look in the coming, like in the next time around, if we're gonna, and I'm gonna reach out to you all individually to talk to you about that, to see what that feels like. I don't wanna jump ahead of myself. I think the container is perfect, because I think having a bound of where it stops that you can look back on is really important. I also think, Candace, your point of like being seen, where Suzanne, it's like, I don't know what happened first. If it was like you doing your thing that opened up to this, or if it was this, or anyway, like if it, like part of me thinks it's not me and it's not this is just happening, coinciding with these other things that are happening. But I don't know. I do feel like it's really powerful to have other people see us and have like say what we're going through in a way that it's like powerfully transformative that I don't know. So I'm really into that.
And it felt better anyway, like regardless of, we can't maybe determine, was it this, was it not this, but it felt better.
Yes.
Yesterday, I was just listening. Sorry, Sean.
No, you go, Jeannie.
Yesterday, I was listening to a thing on NPR about, it was a dream, talking about dreams and remembering dreams. And they were, the guy that was talking about it essentially just said, you end up more able to remember your dreams just by consciously being more aware of them, right? So if nothing else, this space that we've created and spent time in created some level of maybe heightened awareness for each of us to talk about it, to be engaged in it, and so I think just to pay attention to what you're paying attention to, and that whole awareness thing is super valuable to me.
Yeah. Well,
Me too. And the question really is, what do we want to celebrate? So like the container, the other cool thing about having that metaphor and that visualization is that we can like strengthen what's on the inside of the container by like celebrating what's there. So we kind of having the kind of boundaries, maybe not limits, but like having that kind of like, this is what we're doing in this group. This is the kind of behavior that is okay. And we kind of like, I think celebrating is really, that's the theme of this week moving forward. This week 7 is really about cultivating perspective. And there's some ideas that I want to have on what that looks like, particularly as we move forward. But when we're thinking about the end of the Designing Your Life book is about choosing happiness, which we looked at the very beginning of the course, but it's also about developing failure immunity. So it's about moving forward in a way where we embrace and we actually want to fail on small little scales so that we can, which is a huge perspective shift, so that we can pay more attention to the process that we're on. So we expect things to not go the way we want them to, perhaps, but we do like these little kind of mini experiments in a way that builds failure immunity and allows us to choose happiness. So really the big question that we have on the table for this week, moving forward, is how our perspective, how we can use these 6 weeks, soon to be 7 weeks, to alter our perspective and our perspective on where we are, what we're doing, is the kind of the big question. The best way to do that, I think, is to really like make the space to celebrate. Like this is my favorite meeting because Kyle, you started us off so well by saying that you have this opportunity that's falling in your lap that you're like doing, which is amazing. I think that's a wonderful thing to celebrate. And I'm curious if there's, thinking forward before you have to jump on this other call, do you want to say what else what you want to celebrate in yourself or in the process, or any discoveries or things? What's worth celebrating for Kyle?
In a moment of disclosure, because trauma is a real thing, and I think that oftentimes there's a stigma around claiming that you've experienced something traumatic, and I have not fought in a war, and I have not experienced severe and significant occurrences in my life, but that doesn't mean that the what I have gone through, being a CSU employee and our lack of human resource support, I'll leave it at that. That's not to say that it hasn't been a traumatic experience for me at times. And yesterday during a therapy session, I was diagnosed as going through a transition disorder, which I'm fine with. I don't mind, being diagnosed and having a label assigned to me. But what it really did for me is it just, it allowed me to recognize the importance of healing and the importance of taking that healing one day at a time, because we all have to go through periods of healing after, we experience some sort of disruption or some sort of illness. So, I really like the fact that I do feel a bit better each day. And I will again say thank you, because the container that you've created, that we've created together, all of us, has really allowed me to focus on what I am now calling an abundance of agility, and the abundance of being able to look for those opportunities, not get bogged down in the way things, feel like they should be, or the way things actually are, or whatever else, but just focusing on the fact that, and this is something that I've always known, but right, we all get stuck, right? We all get in that rut. But just recognizing that today I have no idea what's coming tomorrow. But for now, I'm going to embrace, having an abundance of agility, and just really, really focus on healing, and really focus on the journey that what on that, part of my journey, and how exciting that is to, to be able to go through a period where, I can reinvent myself and decide who I am going to be moving forward. Ultimately, always striving for what you mentioned, Sean, trying to achieve happiness, and maybe not happiness, but contentment, right? Being happy with the way things are progressing on that journey. So that's me in a nutshell as of right now at 12:15.
Yay.
See why I like today the most? I mean, just in general, but I love the abundance of agility. It's getting me all emotional up here in the eye area.
Well, and just to say very quickly, that came from our conversation last week. Candace, your comments about focusing on an abundance, right, rather than the opposite. And then in another adaptive leadership peer group that I'm in, we talked about abundance was surface, like it came up as a topic, and I was like, ooh, this is really good. But the conversation also shifted towards agility and how important it is for us, in this modern age, to be agile and to not focus on concrete goals and objectives and strategic plans. And that's just the way that we've always done things, right? Not to say that those things aren't important, but recognizing that you've got to be really agile as you get there, because every day literally could probably be different than what you expected. So that's how that surfaced. An abundance of agility.
Love it.
Hey.
It really also connected to what I wrote this morning to prepare for today when I did my what's the biggest thing that I've gotten from these last 7 weeks with this group, particularly around being really present and not actually trying to figure out what's going to happen, but actually just be in what's happening right now and really actually work on my relationship with that. So I think that's a powerful point.
Yeah.
The word that has resonated with me throughout this course, this round, has been patience. I'm often impatient about how things should. I'm well, let's get it done, crank it out, do it, right? And I don't know, I've been sitting in, I don't know, I just have been, it's weird how much patience has been resurfacing for me as a concept.
That totally is in line with where things just take time. The fruit drops when it's ripe.
Yeah.
We can't force things to go the way we want them to go on our timeline and not have some degree of suffering connected to that. But having that patience is huge.
What's confusing is that sometimes things do happen fast.
Yes.
Right? So there's just all of these different pace levels that, it's sometimes well, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be patient, or I'm supposed to sit with that, or that should take longer, or that should be harder. It's no, that just came like this. Or I'm just ready to jump on that now. And a lot of, I think, over the course of this time, between week 4 and 5, I just became ready. And I know it wasn't just ready. I know there was a lot of probably work, years of that went into me being ready, but there was just a switch. So I guess it built to a critical mass, and then just okay, there's just has to be a choice. I was just waiting for that moment when I just said, oh, I'm so ready to not have it this way anymore. I want it to be some other way.
That's fascinating to me. And before we move on, makeup, is that you, Samantha?
Is that why?
Why does it say makeup?
This is me and my cybersecurity. So I have.
Okay, good. I just wanted to protect the integrity of the group in case a random person named Makeup was coming.
Yeah, it is me. So I just pick random usernames. So I have 3 different accounts on my laptop.
Oh, that's funny.
I changed that one now because it's being known.
What are your other account names?
Yeah.
Well, never have your full name in an email address. This one's a private security tip.
So I do want to, I want to make some space for us to write at this point and see what comes up. But does anyone want to say anything before we do? Because we have some other, I know Candace and Leslie and Christina and Makeup haven't been able to, sorry, Samantha, I couldn't resist. Samantha haven't been able to share anything already. So I want to make space for that. The question really on the table is, what do we want to celebrate? This week is all about perspective and thinking about how we can use this course to play with our perspective on life. It's the final component that I feel like honestly may be, again, I feel like this way every week. This may be the most important thing of the whole course, is to be able to look at things from a different angle and at least be able to have the agility to be like, I'm looking at it from this angle and this angle, whatever that is. So one way to do that is to get us thinking about what we want to celebrate, which is another way of asking, what do we want to take with us moving forward? Which is what the free write is going to be, is basically, what do we want to celebrate? And what do we want to, what's standing out as being, what did we get out of this time that we want to bring forward? Does anybody want to say anything before we write?
I was going to say, Sean, just after you said that, like, I've been struggling this week with like perspective and maybe not celebrating enough where I'm at right now, instead of complaining about it more. So maybe that's it. Just what can I celebrate in my current life as it is with just a different perspective? Like, how can I find something about it to celebrate instead of just whining about it, I guess, or wishing I was somewhere else.
So that is basically, that's a giant unlock as you move forward as well, that Bill Burnett and Dave Evans are going to talk about. So when we are moving forward and going in these different experiments, if we want them to go a certain way, it's more difficult to choose happiness because things don't go according to plan. If we go into them with a kind of open, curious mindset, where we're like, what in this? Can I celebrate the fact that I'm trying this? Can I celebrate the fact that I'm doing this thing? We shift. I had a blog post I was working on called Lower the Bar, which was contentious when I brought it up because people were like, I think we should have high standards and try to reach them. I'm like, I don't think so. Nope. I think lower standards is the way to go, especially with other people, which was super contentious, right? Like people are like, that is not like, but when it comes to ourselves, I think we have a tendency to set this really high bar, being like, I'm going to do this thing and it's going to be amazing. And then we come in at like here and then we beat ourselves up over it. Where if we had set the bar down here and then we come in here, we're like, this is gravy. This is amazing.
I mean, I see that, but are you saying that you don't like look forward and have a vision of what you want it to be? Or are you saying you have that vision, but then you just kind of take it back and are like, let's realize that we have multiple steps before we get there.
There's two things going on. So my ultimate vision is enlightenment. Like I want to be full of like unconditional love all the time and have like full awareness of what's going on a moment by moment basis. So I have like super high expectations for me as a character. It's like who I am. I'm like shooting for the stars in practicing heaven on earth, equanimity, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy. Okay. And I'm okay reaching in my person. I'm okay reaching for that as like, this is where I want to go. You know, what would Jesus do, if you will, or whatever that is. My projects that I'm going on, the Wisdom Workshop, we're going to get a ton of people in this next section of the Wisdom Workshop. That goal is a nice one to have, but it also fucks me up a little bit.
Yeah, I see that.
So there is like there's two sets of goals. And now how do we choose happiness in this process?
Hmm.
I am not where I'd like to be right now. Well, I don't know. Really? Maybe, yes. I don't know. Again, this is not me like, I have no fucking idea what the answer is. I'm just playing. What's so interesting about this is, what do we do with where we are to move forward in a way that we can choose happiness for ourselves, which means having a sense of compassion and bringing it back to the other word that I like, celebration. How can we cultivate our ability to celebrate where we are and where we're going?
Got it.
Does that make sense? I love that question. And this was super contentious when I brought it up. I'm like, just lower the bar. And everyone's like, that's a bad idea. And I'm like, I don't think so. So
The immediate bar has to be lower.
and what we came up with in that back and forth is that we just set the bar consciously. So it's okay to like set a high bar, but then settle for good enough. But it's just different for everybody. And I just feel like in our culture, we have this idea that's like, we just shoot for so high. And then, I don't know, that's.
Appears. Yeah, and then it magically happens. Yep.
I think that even goes back to like, setting, right, some morning pages.
Yes.
Set the bar for 3 pages a day.
Yes.
Is kind of intense. So then for the people who are perfectionists or, commitment, whatever, crazies, we are like, oh my God, I'm such a failure because this week I've only done 3 morning pages. Like, my God, I failed, So like, then I was thinking of earlier, I don't know why I thought of it, but like, what if we had a failure scale? Like, I know Elizabeth Gilbert talks about like,
that's it.
Not being afraid to fail. And she's like, okay, if you were to send your work to a publisher and they said no, what's gonna happen? Like, how bad? Like, do you think you will die and people will laugh at you in the streets? Like, so can we just build a failure scale where we're like, well, if I tried it, I wouldn't die. So like, maybe I throw it out there. So I don't know, that's really interesting that all that just kind of came together just now when you said that.
It is super interesting, and the morning pages are a huge example of this also. If we set up the morning pages to try to write well, and we're like, I'm gonna do this so well, that really gets in the way of just showing up and writing shit.
Yeah.
And it's through the writing shit that we get to great shit.
The Buddhist way.
It is. It's very Buddhist in that non-attachment sense.
Yeah.
So again, this is a long backstory to try to get us to the page, which is, what do we want to celebrate? And take some time to just be really kind to ourselves. I know I'm just going to throw this one out there. I think the kind of people that take this class and are willing to take the risk on something like this are phenomenal people. It's like a high, just in general, but then this group especially feels like a group of phenomenal people. So like, it's easy for me to say like, celebrating all you all. Again, I'm getting a little emotional in the eyes because you're amazing people. So this is an amazing group we have. Like, it's easy for me to celebrate that. I think it's harder to celebrate that from the inside potentially, especially when I'm thinking about all the things I could be doing that I didn't quite get to. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So then, what do we want to celebrate? And what do we want to take with us as we move forward? And we're gonna let's go for 13 minutes as much as we can. See what comes up. All right. So, awesome. I want to hear what we have and what we are thinking about moving forward. I also generally during this week pull up the notes that I took on the first session on what our goals and what the good life is as we define them. It's always fun to look back on those. So I'm going to kind of pull those in if they're relevant. But I also want to catch up Samantha and Christina on what you guys missed at the top of the hour is Kyle took another gig that might end up being a paid gig, but he's quitting his job last days in December, and he just got called in to do a facilitation for another session. So he's been kind of celebrating the synchronicity of that, and we were kind of geeking out about, you know, how interesting it is that when you create space for something new to come in, how sometimes that just happens and the time for that. And he also, in terms of his what do we want to celebrate, offered that trauma is a real thing and that he has a hard time talking about, then there's a stigma around identifying and being honest about that trauma, the ability to disclose trauma, and that his experience at work has been traumatic, basically, and that he is in transition and seeing people that are helping him do that, but really just to celebrate that he's okay with the importance of healing, that he's in space, and I'm trying to paraphrase as well as I can based on my notes, but that he is in the process of healing and he's celebrating that as part of it. So interesting celebration, and I'm glad I was able to say it again because I think that's really helpful to have us avoid toxic positivity and say if we can get to a point where we're celebrating the challenges that we have, I think that's an incredible win, honestly. So does anybody want to, and we also had not being afraid to fail, and I think we heard Suzanne say that over week 4 and 5 she just like became ready. There's like a switch that went over, and if whether or not it was like building up to this point or what it was, but for some reason something just switched over. So I'm curious what we have, what we want to celebrate or what we want to take forward from our time so far.
I'll
Leslie.
start.
Thank you.
Can you all hear me okay, even though it's noisy? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm celebrating that I'm still on the path, and even as it turns and dips and sometimes doubles back and sometimes seems to actually disappear, that I'm calm and not panicked about that, because I don't need the destination yet. I just need to stay on the path. In fact, I'm not ready for the destination yet. So I'm just excited that I'm doing that. I'm also celebrating that you all have convinced me to explore things I never would have done. I've been listening to some things about the Stoics and existentialism and challenge and courage, and that is not something most people that know me would say, oh yeah, Leslie's getting into philosophy, but I'm really enjoying it, and I've got a lot to celebrate. I'm jamming on what we're doing, even though I would have told people when we started, this is not my jam.
How are you getting into Stoicism?
I downloaded the app Blinkist. Are you all familiar
Okay.
with that? It gives you like little shorts on books.
Yeah.
And I can't remember which one I started with, but it was about, you know, living a good life. And someone quoted the Stoics, and I'm like, what's up with those Stoics anyway? So I read and listened to some things, and I'm like, oh, I'm one of those Stoics, I think. Like, I think I might actually be like that. So it was kind of good. And then existentialism still kind of blows my mind. Like, it's just a lot for me to think about, but I've been listening and reading some things about that as well. And then the courage piece came in. At work, we're going through this exercise to create a new strategic plan that is courageous strategic transformation. And I don't feel like it's particularly courageous. So I wanted to find out, like, what does courage actually look like? And so I have been exploring that a bit and trying to figure out how to bring it back to folks who need to understand what we're doing is not at all courageous. It's pretty normal and average and sometimes pathetic. So anyway, that's where I've been.
Welcome to CSU. No, just joking.
Thank you.
So cool. I'm going to share some of my favorite Stoicism resources in the chat as we go forward. And that philosophy is having a field day right now. Like, it's super popular. And I think for interesting reasons.
Oh, I didn't even know that. And look at me jumping on.
There you go. No, I think you're in, it's a very accessible and fascinating and awesome philosophy of life, for sure.
I wanted to really quick piggyback off what Leslie said about not knowing what path you're on and being able to stay like okay with it. I wrote that I had gratitude for being somewhat grounded or feeling like I'm somewhat grounded in what has been a pretty chaotic time. And I do attribute some of it just to my own personality, but some of it to like the helpful people and being in this experience again twice now for me. For 7 weeks through this experience has been incredibly powerful to just be like, check yourself, notice things, be aware, other people have other shit going on. Like all the stuff that comes out of this course has actually really, I think, kept me feel slightly grounded in the midst of what I think is a lot of fucking chaos every day. So yeah, I'm on a path, but I don't know what it is, but I feel thankful for being around or for having that, I guess, for having that experience.
You mentioned gratitude. It's huge. Lots of positive psychological research on the power of gratitude. And a good way to move forward is of the practice of just taking time to count what we're grateful for. It's a great way to increase life satisfaction pretty easily. I still think it's really interesting. The only way we have of measuring someone's life satisfaction is by asking them how satisfied they are. So researchers are really like legitimately like, this is a problem because your mood, if you go in to take, I'm like, how satisfied are you? And you're like, I'm fucking in a bad mood, 4 out of 10. And then you ask them the next day and they're like, I'm in a pretty good mood, 7 out of 10. Well, how satisfied are you? Really? Like, I'm trying to do a scientific study here. So they've like tried to figure out ways to control for the mood variance and all these things when we're trying to, but still, our life satisfaction in large part is how we perceive our life, which is why if we practice being grateful, it actually is a pretty clear way to boost our life satisfaction. As one of the, kind of positive emotions that we have.
Aren't there people doing some things with like heart rate variability and things like that where they measure that? And I know like the average person can't do functional MRIs and things like that, but I think there's some lab experiments about that and the nervous system and
measuring stress and
the evenness of the nervous, how often you're in parasympathetic versus sympathetic.
Yep. Wait, what's the Talking Heads reference? Oh, it's the lyrics. Yes, David Byrne.
That song "Road to Nowhere" really isn't about being on a road to nowhere. It's actually being on a road to where you know where you're going. I love that song. And when Jeannie said some things.
Love it. I just didn't want to miss any David Byrne reference.
I guess I was going to say too, I guess it relates to the path now that I think about it in just a different way. But I think mine was celebrating like beginning, like starting this process. And it's like the way I described it, I think it was in my first morning pages or maybe the second, was like, okay, my memory and my memories and my beliefs are like this really ugly closet that like you don't want anyone to know about. Like it's a pantry or it's like a mud room or something, an attic. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go in and it's not gonna be fun most of the time. I'll find a cute picture, baby picture, and then I'll find like a huge ugly spider and be like, oh my God, why am I doing this? This is horrible. But my goal was to like go through, categorize things and mentally put them in pretty little organization boxes and bins, and like synchronicity box and bad belief box. Like we're fired those beliefs. They're no longer here, or I don't know. So I guess celebrating starting the process and like unlocking that door and flinging it open and being like, all right, like rolling up my sleeves, like, here we go. I'm going in. So that's hard. It's scary to celebrate, but it feels like the same, being on a path and just doing the work.
Wow, I love that, the attic visual, like that really resonated. Like there's these baby pictures, oh, this is really cute. And then, oh, the spiders and the little mouse coming, and the bad hair pictures, or the whatever else might be there you just want to forget, or you have forgotten because we've suppressed it. That's really, wow.
I also really liked that, not just the image, but I think it's interesting that you didn't make the connection, but Leslie asking, what does courage really look like? And you kind of answered that in an interesting way. I also think that's a good, making sure that we're resourced well enough for that kind of a journey is important, I feel like. Either with like a, professional therapist or a friend, like someone to talk to, or a group. I think having a kind of presence, a non-reactive, non-judgmental awareness is really helpful to kind of just be like, okay, wow. So that's what you did when you were 22. At least for me, that's where it comes up. It's less about what happened and more about how I was. We're like, man, you're kind of a shithead. That wasn't very good of you. Wow. That's really how you're going to break up with your first college girlfriend. That's class act, buddy. Way to go.
Yeah, it's like almost bringing the tools, like who's going to be my broom, and I need gloves. Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to do it without anything.
Yeah, it's, like that equanimity and that compassion for yourself, I think, is really big. The other thing that's interesting that I felt like I want to bring up is Byron Katie's The Work. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
You might get a kick out of that, Candace. I haven't really gotten into her stuff very much, but other people swear by it, and it's a way of like it's the work is to just look at what we think about something. So like, or a belief that I have. So I believe this, and she basically walks people through this process about like, is that really true? What would happen if it wasn't true? Like basically to loosen our judgments about things, basically, is one way you could use it. I don't know if that's helpful. I just thought of it while you were talking, so something. And thank you for saying that, because it's like that excavation work. Natalie Goldberg talks about that, like the shit we have to go through to like do the work is really significant.
And there's a lot. And I think we also who did I also hear? Anyway, someone was talking about, Brene Brown, comparative suffering. And so we're like, well, my closet's not that bad, like, because I never lost a child, and so like we almost discredit our work too. And we're like, oh, I'm going to help my girlfriend work out her stuff. My stuff is like not that bad. So then we're also like discrediting our right to do that for ourselves. Like we're like, oh, I need to do it for everybody else. And like, well, yeah.
Wow.
You lock the door on your own pantry, but you probably should go in and work on that.
Powerful. Yeah. That is like what Kyle was saying.
Yeah, and I liked that what he was talking about, like, oh, well, my trauma is not as bad as that trauma, like, and comparing trauma. And I had a second hypnotherapy session between last time and this time. And the stuff that's coming up out of my subconscious, I would think, like, I've had a lot of bigger traumas, and I really thought that when we did this work, I was going to go there, and I actually didn't. It was these
Wow.
small things when I was little that everybody has experienced.
Yeah.
And the power that those things have, and the way children interpret things that then clouds their entire rest of colors their whole life. And I was like, what? Like, everybody's got this stuff, right? And I knew this here, but now I like know it. It just, so we all have it. We've all lived. We've all were children at one point. So we've all got stuff. And it's like this detective work to try to figure out which stuff is affecting my stuff now. But it all matters, all of it.
And where we're going based on that, right? Like what kinds of perspectives we want to have that are going to help us move forward in the way that since we are still alive.
Yeah. So it's like everybody's got stuff. So everybody can say, I need to look at this, or I deserve to look at this just as much as anybody else. And I can also care for other people at the same time. These things don't have to be, like you were saying, Candace, it doesn't have to be either or. I don't have to, okay, I'm going to help you with your thing and I'm going to discount mine.
Well, and it's hard too because we live so many different lives within our own life. So as you stand here, like I remember saying to a friend once, I'm like, how do you be a 33-year-old, whatever, professional in the world? And how are you still not the little like bucktooth girl who can't see over her toes over her belly to her toes in the shower? Like you're still that girl somewhere. But when people look at you, they don't know she's there, but she's really there. So it's like, how do you integrate all those past lives and be authentic in this one that you're in now? It's like,
it's hard.
Who knows? I don't know. Any tips?
Yeah, you gotta try shit. Experiment.
That's exactly it. The delving deeper, that's when I was ready. Part of me being ready was, I'm ready for things to be different. So universe, show me how to do that. And then bam, it's like, oh, hypnotherapy there, we're gonna go do that. Or it's this course, or like, some of the writing sessions I've done and things like that. It's just like, it just shows up when I was like, I'm going to do this because I know I need to do this. And that's one of the things I wrote that I was celebrating, was the unlearning and learning that I always need to do the process of unlearning, no matter how terrifying it is.
And I think having self-compassion and kindness for self through all this process, I've been realizing just how critical of myself I have been my whole adult life. And it's linked to the amount of shame I carry, which is mostly unnamed shame, but it's linked to those traumas, which I have pushed so far back that I don't even know what they are. And yeah, I can get the professional help for all that. But the shame and how that manifests in our adult lives. And thank goodness at 50, I'm finally ready to work on this. And that's what I wrote about celebrating me, like Christina, and my life. And I had to go through some darkness, which will come back, right? It's part of life and the path. But in a mindful way, just staying put and being grounded, like Jeannie said, and to do the work and celebrating this life that I have. And I'm not sure, I am always compelled to want to share. And I think all of us here as creatives and lifelong learners want to share whatever we're learning with the world. And I definitely have that desire, but it's not so urgent now because I have to do the work in order to have something compelling and articulate to share. At this family wedding this weekend, I met a published author. She wrote Tuesday Nights in 1980. Her name is Molly Prentice, and now we're related. But she teaches with Natalie Goldberg's book, and because of this class, I had so many amazing conversations this weekend in a present, mindful way. And we're all of us are in this place in one way or the other, right? Of trying to figure out where we are and what our work is and what our place is and what we have to offer. But she wants to do what you're doing, Sean, like with workshops and the Buddhism part in writing and the practice. And that's also something I wrote about celebrating, is that I now have a practice of writing that I need and that I'll honor and keep doing. So I know that's my typical rambly style, but I feel like I've had some great breakthroughs through this class and super grateful.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Yeah.
I felt like it wasn't a hard, everyone that I invited to do this that said yes to it was exactly who should be here. Right? Like it was not a hard moment. I know it wasn't a hard moment for me to be like, oh my God, here's the timing. Here's the person.
Samantha was getting in there as well.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking about, I think it was Candice or Jeannie who mentioned about like, what does courage look like? And I was in a room in and out today for quite a few hours about they're reading an extract of philosophy, and it was all about, you know, the dynamics of communication, where the attacker became, you know, the defender, and switching all of that. And then it came into a conversation about conscious awakening. And somebody was speaking about how sometimes conscious awakening is mistaken for like maybe a mental health crisis or whatever it is, because it's not understood. And then the first thought that came to my mind when they were talking is about like, who are the gatekeepers of conscious awakening? Like, who tells you that you're experiencing this breakthrough and this is what it's supposed to feel like? And if it doesn't meet the criteria, then you're not at this breakthrough phase. Like, how do I know myself that I have definitely unlocked something at the next level, even if I don't know how to explain it? And I think part of it has been always looking for something exterior to explain what I was feeling on the interior. And that made me then sort of police my emotions or police this, because like if they can determine what I'm feeling, then they must be right in terms of this is what I'm feeling. I don't know. And I'm starting to think that the conscious awakening is actually really saying that, excuse my French, I don't actually give a fuck at the moment. I'm at that point where I just really don't, I am so comfortable in my unknowing. And I think for me last week, when I finally put my end date of my job and I moved on, and I said to myself, like, I felt exhausted. Like this weekend, I went out and met friends. It was second time in central London since the pandemic. And the whole of Sunday, I felt exhausted, absolutely exhausted after just 4 hours. And then I said to myself, I don't feel guilty for spending Sunday doing nothing. And because it said I needed to rest after doing something that for me was very, very big. I mean, like I haven't taken the tube in London since March 2020. I haven't taken any public transport whatsoever. I haven't left London. So something like that, just going somewhere different, being with people for 4 hours with loud music, is something that I would not normally celebrate, but it is a win for me, because normally my wins were always associated with what somebody told me was a win. And if it wasn't a win, then I was not winning. So I think for me, celebrating those small things was really helpful, but it was more really that I reached out to my friend. I was like, I'm hyperventilating. She's like, it's fine. The outside needs you. So wow. I think for me, that was I realized sometimes you don't have to share your wins with people, because like what is something big to you is something either so small to somebody, or it's something so big because they haven't yet got to that point where they realize that they are more than enough. So yeah, wow. I think that was.
I was gonna say too.
Hey,
amazing. I love that. I love that, validating your own breakthroughs and also realizing you don't have to tell everybody about them. You just get to be in that new state. Because we saw you have one with blue pens. I mean, we literally have a breakthrough.
True.
And you're like, you guys, And then it was in the red pen, and we're like, okay, she had a breakthrough. She had a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And I will share too, and I guess being a little bit, you know, whew, we're in the sharing circle. My first breakthrough was after the first class, after Sean sent the recording of the first class. And I was hearing him call names, like including my name. And I had an interesting high school experience, and I left college after 1 year because of a breakup with someone I met in high school. And I suddenly was triggered and realized I cut myself off of education because I dropped out of school, because I thought it was a failure, it was shameful, blah, blah, blah. And so I was so terrified to hear Sean calling people's names, because all of a sudden I was back in a classroom and I couldn't be in an absolutely more scary place ever. And I'm literally on the Pooter Trail, bawling my eyes out, going, oh my God, I'm free to learn again. I can go back to school. It was crazy. It was just like, holy moly. And I've been carrying that for how long? So those breakthroughs are so special. And I think, like you said, this vessel is where those can kind of cultivate. And you said cultivating conscious, and I wrote down conscious creative cultivation. Like, let's consciously create the life we want to cultivate, or something like conscious creative cultivation. But that's so good. I love that, Samantha. I love it.
Oh, good.
No, go ahead. Sorry, Suzanne.
That's okay. You want to go first?
No, go ahead.
When you were talking about like that thing, like, how do you know when you have a conscious awakening? Shouldn't it be even awakenings? Isn't it continual? Because even when I'm talking about spirituality, I've had so many different levels of that. Like my initial one, I was like, oh my God, now I know everything and the whole world makes sense. And then you go on and you're like, yeah, I don't have even just a little piece of that. And then you have another one that comes through, and then you think again, oh my God, I got it all now. So after several of those, I'm like, okay, I never have it all, but really I'm grateful for each one. So it's just multiple ones, but the way you put it is like, you're the one who knows when you have them, not by somebody else's standard. How could it be by somebody else's standards? We all have completely different backgrounds and experiences and personalities and levels of healing of various different things and resources, and it's just always going to be different. Yeah. Lots of
I loved, like, I literally, when you said this, I had written in my my notes that I had gratitude for the shift in me that is getting more okay with not having to do the maximum amount of shit to be valuable, right? It's that idea of I'm okay and it's totally fine that I take a nap pretty much every day. I'm cool with that. I fucking love my life right now. It's slightly underworked, but I don't care, right? Or it's underworked according to whatever standard we have established, or I have established for myself, or this culture has established for us. And I'm like, whatever, I'm taking a nap and I want to.
This is how I read the existential point. For whose standards are we living by, basically? And it's okay to live up to someone else's standards if we're choosing that. It's not so okay if we're living up to the standards without being aware that we're doing that. So like the process is one of being aware of the choices that we're making. I love the idea of recurring awakening a ton, that it's like awakening, because I do think that's what it feels like. We get into a streak where we're open up to one thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I also love, Samantha, I'm still coming back to the idea that I'm looking for something on the outside to explain what I'm feeling on the inside, or like having the custom of having that external win. And I see that's what we do in education. It's like my students are waiting to get the A to know that they did a good job. It's like, no, what do you give a shit about my perspective? Like, I'm a biased grader. How's that? Like, take that to the bank. You should give yourself a grade. I don't say that because that's like not really a good part of my role, but I do think like That really resonated with me. How do we get to the point? Because that is also really messy as well, especially if it's continual. Like I had this awakening and then it's like, okay, now what? Well, you just keep on going. Like it's like the next one and the next one and the next one. Like, what are you I know for me, I'm reading another book, like being excited to be on the next thing is like one of the things that I'm using now to like guide myself. Where if I'm excited, just got a book on improv wisdom. I'm excited to read about improvisation and wisdom. So I know that that's like a cool path for me forward. I'm excited to think about how this course could be offered to multiple levels for people that have taken it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 6 times, and integrate like the newbie. Oh, this is your first time, huh? Cool. And teach it in a way I've never thought of it that way. That's cool and interesting to me. So I know like I'm going that way. So it's that, and Leslie brought this up in an earlier, it's the engagement and energy thing of being able to be like, I am feeling engaged and energetic when I am reading this book about this idea. And that is enough of an external validator that I'm onto something. I don't know where it's going, but fuck, it feels good to be engaged. And so I'm going to keep doing that. I also, the last thing, since this is related to what I wrote, I really am interested in how I'm relating to my time with the abundance mindset, because I'm doing so much right now. And I feel like when I think about all the things I have to do, I notice myself be like, ugh. And when I'm like just actually doing them and like being in the moment doing them, I'm noticing like my time open up. So I'm like personally, I'm really again celebrating and exploring like my relationship with time and how I'm existing inside of it. That was the thing that I came up with.
I heard you, Sean, the other day say on a Clubhouse thing, and I really like this. It was something about creating time containers, right? Whether it's 15 minutes to write or the one I was like, I never really thought about this, like functioning, Christina, you'll love this too, like in a moon cycle to like new moon to new moon, like let's have that be a confine. Or, we create them all the time in a daily, right? We have all these weird rules around the time frame of a day. Or
Monday morning, we live like this like Monday, oh, what about this week? Where it's really like, actually, maybe that's not the best way to organize my conception of time. Maybe it should be more like what's going on this, and I still feel like I'm playing with that. And I still feel like 7 weeks is a really interesting one. Like, what can I do in the next 7 weeks to create? And again, one of the things I hope we take from this class is the ability to consciously play with a time box, not just in our afternoon, but like, okay, I'm going to do this for this moon or this month or this day. And then at the end of it, I'm going to stop and reflect and be like, how'd that go? Oh, that was a total failure. Awesome. I'm going to try something else. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how we kind of start playing around with having agency, existential agency over our learning process.
One thing that I thought about was how, like, when I first heard that time was a social construct about a month ago, I was like, what do you mean? Time is a social construct. You tell me somebody just decided 24 hours and then that was it. And the person said yes. And then I said, wow. Like the past 6 weeks or so, I have, I've not had to wake up before 9 a.m. for a meeting or for a job. I've not felt the Monday blues. I've not felt when it's a weekend. And then I said to myself, how about if this course was on a Sunday? How about if it was not on a weekday? Would that mean that would we take it or would we not? What is our association with the weekdays that makes Monday such a dreadful day? And I felt sorry for my friends. I was like, I cannot relate. But then I said, like, what if Sunday was the start of the week? What if I did some things on Sunday and then half day on Monday? And it's this thing of conditioning, I think, sometimes of like, Monday, be back at work. So I not condition myself. I could only go on Friday night because I need 2 days to recover with the age that I am. And then it's like I'm like subconsciously telling myself that I will be tired on Monday morning because I'm going on Friday. And then with the whole rethinking about work, the meritocracy thing that was mentioned earlier, I said the meritocracy thing does not exist, because something that I realized is that, you know, like Black people have been called lazy ever since, you know, they start working for free. And the fact that there was no promotions when my ancestors were enslaved in the field. So meritocracy does not exist. They were not promoted. They didn't get the better jobs. They didn't become owners of plantations. So the fact that hard work means rewards is fake. It's a fallacy. It does not exist because it has not worked for people like me. So I know for a fact, hard work is not really going to fulfill my life.
Wow.
Fucking awesome.
Love that.
And terrible at the same time.
Yeah. If anyone's not listened to the 1619 podcast, that was a real eye-opener for me, even understanding where quotas came from. Sales quotas.
Did the New York Times do that?
1619, yeah.
That's
by,
it. Okay.
Yeah,
I need to listen to that.
Nicole Hannah Smith. Oh gosh, what her name?
Yeah.
But that's where sales quotas came from enslavement days. That's what we all aspire to, sales quotas, getting weighed how much you picked up during the day. And the harder you worked, the more you had to bring in. And that's what happens at work. The better job you do, the more projects you get, but not more time, not more pay. So it really made me think about this thing about, it's not about the harder, if I work harder, I'll get more, because it didn't work for people who look like me. So who came up with this meritocracy myth?
Well, and
Right then.
it's that agreed upon stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, I see blue and you see what you see as blue, but really that's just an agreed upon thing that we've been told you're supposed to call this blue because that's what blue is for you. So it's like that agreed upon thing. Or like, what about people that don't really honor daylight savings? Like, isn't that like, wait, what? Like, so you just don't? So we just like, why do I have to get up, work, and be somewhere at 9 a.m.? I guess I don't see the point.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, really, when you really ask why.
Yeah. No, we don't. None of us are going to go to work anymore.
Yeah, well, welcome back, Kyle. Samantha just laid down the gauntlet, blowing up the idea of meritocracy. We have also, just to try to catch you up, we've been talking about conscious awakening and whether or not, who gets to say what a conscious awakening is. So what counts as a conscious awakening? That we have a tendency to count on external things to validate our internal states and what problem that gives us. That we are actually, and then we also talked about like integrating past versions of ourselves into where we are now as part of the work and part of the challenging work, that we need to be careful as we do it and resource ourselves with self-compassion as we go forward, celebrating that we're on the path, continuing to be on the path, what that looks like, being okay. Samantha, I'm starting to think that the conscious awakening means that I really don't give a fuck at the moment. That's a nice quotable. End quote there. And we're looking at time and thinking about, for me, I'm rethinking my relationship with time and looking at an abundance mindset with time, particularly in doing one thing at a time and not thinking about the other things I could be doing and not extrapolating out into the future of where this could be going, but just really being like, okay, which is one of the things why I feel like I really like Clubhouse, is because I didn't say this before, but where I'm able to just be in one moment, I really like that. Yeah.
How'd it go, Kyle?
It was good.
Yeah.
They offer you a job?
Mhm.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. No, it was just to say this really quickly. The team that I'm coaching, they're from Alabama A&M, which you may know this. They're historically Black college, and the team is working on mobile units to help communities plan for disaster. So both pre-disaster and post-disaster, equipping them with the learning and the materials and the knowledge to be able to make sure that all their documents are in one place. So when there's an emergency, they can just grab that box that all their documents are in and get out of the house. So that's fun. That'll be a fun project to work with.
Awesome.
I want to kind of end, quote unquote, end our time. I don't feel like this is the end, and a big selling point in terms of that's language is so problematic. A selling point for why I would imagine that people would get value out of this is the connection to a community long term. So there will be monthly meetups and monthly opportunities, and we're still small enough that like lifetime office hours with me is still like a legit part of the offering. I'm not like, so if you want to reach out, that's great. I still am also really thinking about how to move forward in the next, keeping this going. So I do want to reach out to people individually on that. But I do also want to share with you what people said on week 1 of what the good life is, and how interesting, given the conversation that we just had. Candace says, pretty interesting. Compassion and curiosity to others, and also compassion and curiosity to the self. Suzanne talked about being curious and seeking with other people. Transitioning. Life is a series of transitions. There might be bigger transitions that we name, but they're small daily transitions. Intentional evolution. This is amazing as well. Christina's sense of, but I mean, I don't want to actually just take this over. I'm actually curious about, I mean, the last thing that I wanted to say or ask is, our perspective on success, our perspective of the good life. If we feel like we are, are we more equipped to live what we think is a good life at this point? And what does that mean? Has our notion of that shifted or changed? Or maybe that's too narrow of a... For the next 10 minutes, we've got all the time in the world.
Pressure.
I know, it's terrible.
I do have these mini moments that have happened to me that I think are sometimes weird. Like when you sort of, again, on this awakenings thing, the more and more awake you become, I certainly can have more gratitude, but I can also get more pissed off because I think there's things that are just like fucked. Right. And you're paying attention to be like, why do we do that? Which that question of why. So yes, I feel more equipped to have a good life. I also feel sometimes a little more ragey because it can be encountered to like what the systems are saying we should do or how we should be or what it should look like. And then sometimes how to maneuver, I guess. But again, in the abundance of agility that Kyle was talking about, maybe that's what we need to have that perspective.
Well, this is interesting because I remember, I think it was the first week. Yeah, it was in introductions when Christina talked about sensuality. And I think that we have all shut down a lot of them because we don't want to feel all of the feels, like the rage and the and the extreme stuff. So I think actually I was kind of scared when Christina was like, yeah, I want to like feel it and I want to be really in it. And I was like, I don't think I have the capacity to handle, like I can't. I'm one of those empaths who walks into a room and absorbs energy from left and right and upside down, and it's so overwhelming. So kind of that fear of waking up is, I think, what keeps us all so numbed out and so asleep. So yeah, I guess that is the fear of awakening. And what am I going to find in that closet? What is going to be in there that I've been trying to avoid for who knows how long?
Yeah,
that's a big one, Jeannie. Big one.
It does, and I mean, I do think we live in a world that's not really conducive to our flourishing and well-being. I mean, at least maybe I don't want to say that as such a big statement, but there are systems in place that make it very hard to establish human flourishing, especially as we need more of this. And we're primed to be doing all this work alone. We don't have time for this. It's more like, okay, let's go, do. Even when we're off, this is the idea of the panopticon, right? Like, I don't know if we know this reference, but basically the future of surveillance is that we will all surveil ourselves. So we don't need someone controlling us, because we will internalize the mechanisms of control so that we end up like policing ourselves.
Haven't we already internalized the mechanisms of control, and that's part of the problem?
That's what Foucault's saying. So part of what we're trying to unlearn that and be free, in the sense that, and
I love that, Leslie.
Well, it's like, are we afraid to take off the blindfold? Like, uh-oh. And maybe that's why last week we were all like, oh my God, don't leave me in this room and then take off my blindfold. And then I had to deal with what I see. And I'll be all alone.
Right, and that can be scary, and even that in itself can be another trauma, right? And so so when I try to encourage people to take up some of this work, I have to be really careful about their capacity to do so right now.
Yeah.
And do they need something else before they get to that piece that allows them to do it with some psychological safety? So it's like, I'd love to say everybody needs to go and dig in deep, like eventually, and maybe you just need to dig a teeny bit and do what can be handled, but each person knows for themselves, I think, what they can deal with right now.
I think that's made me think, Suzanne, about resistance versus resilience. As in, like, in the past, I have kept on knocking on or forcing that door open when there was resistance, thinking it was resilience, but it wasn't, and there's certain terms I now hate: productivity, resilience, because resilience is almost taught in a way of no matter what happens, just stay strong, stay focused, take the battering, and you can soldier on. Well, sometimes resilience is accepting that, well, this door actually is not opening for me, because I don't think it should be hard to be who we are. It shouldn't really be hard. And if we're fitting ourselves into boxes where we have to break corners of ourselves, then we don't really belong there.
Bye, Leslie.
Bye, Leslie.
Hi, Leslie.
Bye, Leslie.
Thank you for being a part of this group.
I want to stay a part of this group, so let me know how we do that.
I will. I'll reach out to you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Samantha, my sister, the other day she said, I feel like there's part of me being resilient right now is saying fuck off.
Yes.
And I was just
like
like,
so Samantha, she's like, you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say too, on that kind of like opening up and breaking open and taking the blindfold off, like I described it once to a friend as like, I'm okay with being an egg that gets cracked open, because I'll turn it into a cupcake or an omelet, or like, just let me crack open and let it be okay. But like, that's so hard for our loved ones, right? To like, oh no, she's broken, or like the egg is open. It will never be the perfect egg again, but it could be something much more magical. So like, I think getting okay with cracking open and not going on that outer opinion of like, well, she's cracked open. Like, she's just like a good luck with her. She's a mess, right? We're a mess.
Right. And I think there has to be breaks. Like after my third hypnotherapy session, I'm taking a break for a while. I'm just going to do, because I need after all of this plus those, like I need a break, and we all need breaks. Like people are just like, they're constantly reading self-help and they're doing this and that. It's like, pick one thing, work on it for a bit, take a little break, go have some fun, right? Play, then come back to it. And come back to it, especially when you have something nagging or something like, hey, you know what? I really need this one thing to change right now. Let me figure out what's preventing me from doing that. Then attack that thing, right? I'm not going to fix all my things. Like I don't even have that goal to do that. It's just going to go by what do I want to be different? How much healing do I need to do in order to do what I'm here to do for the world? And to be the person that my friends and people around me deserve. And
That's so beautiful.
the rest of it's just gonna stay like that.
And that's the thing. I think resilience is a parable sold to those who fight against the status quo. You know, like, just be resilient. They will, you know, they'll change their mind, or just be resilient, have a protest or write a manifesto. But it doesn't make sense how in 2021, I'm still in most places, like every place I've worked, I'm still the only Black female manager. And not just even the only Black female, I'm the only person of color who's a manager. It's 2021. I can't be talking to women on the Clubhouse app who are 60, who are talking about going through the same thing. Yeah. And, you know, it's that resilience, to just be resilient, you know, protest quietly. It's like, resilience is a dream sold to keep those keep people suffering and struggling, and assuming that the struggle is what makes you get there. I don't believe in a struggle love. I don't believe in a struggle life anymore. We have to allow, I have to allow myself to accept good things to happen to me without something bad having happened first.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes. And this brings us back to Sean's question initially, is what are we celebrating? Well, if we're celebrating resilience and hard work, then like who told us to celebrate that? Like, I'm actually celebrating that I don't have a lot of hours in the day to go to work. Like, I got lots of hours to read and sleep, and maybe we shift what we celebrate.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been celebrating suffering for like a really long time.
Yep. Look how strong she is. Like, oh, fuck that.
Fuck
it.
What?
No.
What's
All
happening?
right, well, what did we learn today? Let's just burn some shit. I think the best thing for me to say at the very end of this container, at least how this container is with these people, since this will not be the same again, is that I have no idea what to say. I was going to be like, I love that. That's great, which is fine. But my role as a teacher is to not be like, good job. Or, you know, in this setting, it's really about, I hope, to transfer the power of the educational system to you all so that you're able to transfer it to other people as well. Which, what did we learn? Establishing presence, clarifying purpose, articulating a path, finding some projects or some plans, prototyping, finding people, connecting with people, partnering and kind of being creative about that, and then getting all of that to fail almost intentionally so that we can use it to get more perspective.
Mm.
And you can do that on like a small scale. Here's the presence that we have. Here's the purpose that we're working on. This is what we're going to do. This is the plan, prototype, the people. Let's watch it fail. And then what do we learn? It's like, I mean, again, like my really big goal with this, the two things that I really saw that needed to happen that we're just not training people in, is to be present to ourselves, right? To really use writing as a tool to really be honest and present to ourselves, because we're just not taught to do that. And then to take some agency over how and what we learn. So like literally all the material, even one of those ideas like can be really used and really ran with and run with. I am going to be reaching out to people individually to just like get the debrief personally to see just I'm curious to see if I hear something new if we talk one-on-one versus in this group. And talk about what it looks like moving forward in this time scale or another one. But other than that, I'm curious if anyone has any other final words besides burn the shit down, which is cool. I
want to thank everybody. I had written down here, one thing I wanted to celebrate was the fact that you all, whether virtually or emotionally, when you were able to, were really present and here for all of it. And the feedback, the empathy that you all shared here was super meaningful to me. So thank you.
Agreed.
I love this class round too. It's freaking awesome.
I was going to say one of the really valuable things to me that really helped me was having the video playback. I mean, that is so big for me because there are so many things that pop up when I re-listen to stuff where I'm like, wow, apparently I was head in the clouds. I had no idea. Samantha said this like breakthrough thing that changed my week, but I wouldn't have heard it if it wasn't recorded. So I think that's really a big helpful part of it. And it might encourage me to record more stuff that I write because I'm much less likely to go back and read through my journals than I am to just play something while I'm driving in the car. So I might just start putting some stuff to audio so I can absorb it in a different, whatever, I don't know, modality.
For me, like the biggest thing was just going through the journey with other women and men who did not know, but we were all in such different stages. And I think one of the scariest thing about, deciding, what, this job doesn't work for me is thinking that you're the only one in the whole world who's decided just to do this crazy thing. And it's reassuring that there is a great resignation, but it's even more reassuring to know that I've gone through this sort of unknowingness, like, Leslie, with Kyle, and I have realized that, the biggest thing for me is that it's okay to not know the answer, but I know the answer. I know the process. I don't know the answer, and that's fine. And I think what I've written is, today I have done enough, which reflects back to that verse I came to in the Bible about, like, even God looked at everything he'd done and said, this looks good. This is good. I can rest, and I said, I have to do that. At the end of the day, I said, I've done enough. I have enough, and I am enough. And I am becoming. And I think that's now become a very active thing for me. Like, I am becoming. I won't be, like, wealthy. I won't be rich. I won't be super confident. I am becoming this because it's a process. It's not a destination. And then I think that will definitely change my outlook in life. I don't know what the next step is, but I'm enough for today. So that's about it.
It's powerful.
When I was in labor the first time, it helped me to get through the pain and to birth the big old baby boy by thinking about all of the other women that were in labor at the same time. And not just women, but like animals and dolphins and whales or whatever. And yeah, you do go deep when you're in labor, but I think it's comparable to this, just knowing that there's people in my own community, but all over the world. It makes the collective seem more cogent and close, just knowing that we're all in this right now together. And that's, I think, one of the most powerful parts of this experience for me, and I'm very grateful for it. So that, and that we're ending on resilience, and that just happens from these classes. I mean, like, that we're acting out what we're talking about while we're saying it. Like, the many levels of meaning and connection are just, they make me giddy.
And this is like how we're supposed to be, I think, as human beings. This is like that sense of communitas, of like community that is like together. There's like a liminal space that we're in this shared space together, where we kind of lose ourselves in the, like, I don't lose myself, but I'm like seeing that community in this space. I think that's how we're meant to be, and why it's so hard to not have this is it goes against what we are. So we've like found a little tribe here.
Thank you for doing it, Sean, again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it has been the great honor of my adult life, honestly, so far. And
Well, and maybe thanking ourselves for like coming on. Like that is one thing I said. Like I'm super grateful to Jeannie, and I'm also grateful that I put it out there that was like, I want to do a writing class.
Yeah.
Where
You
will
were
it
able
come
to be found, right?
Right, exactly. So I think we all have to be grateful to ourselves for taking that step towards ourselves. Like, I think that's really special. Thanks, Sean.
And with that, I'm going to be reaching out to you all, and finding a time to talk. And if there's a time that works better for you, let me know. I do want to talk with you within the next week, and I will send another email with the kind of reflection stuff on it. And it's meant to go on for another week. So this last week is like our reflection internal work. So we take this container and internalize it more in a more restful way. So that's kind of what the last week is. So it starts now. So enjoy that reflection, and I'm gonna check in, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk with you all this week.
Love it.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. It's really great. I appreciate you
All the
all.
love. Thank you.
Thanks for
Bye.
making my
Thank
dream
you.
a reality.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.